Hello, this is Nicole again, back with my third and final video reflection for my field observations um, in diverse 21st century classrooms for Education 346 at UNC Asheville. In this video, I will be discussing my observations in Cane Creek Middle School, observing Miss Johnson, the inclusion specialist who worked in a couple of different teachers' classrooms, but I observed her in Miss Kechuk's 8th grade English Language Arts inclusion class and Miss Warden's 7th grade English Language Arts inclusion class. On the days that I observed Miss Johnson, I observed her working with students on a couple of different activities, right? So in Miss Kechuk's class, students were working on their Genius Hour projects, which were primarily focused around effective communication and presentation strategies, very important 21st century language and communication skills, right? And then in Miss Warden's class, students were working on building vocabulary through word build activities and also using found text to create love poems. So I observed Miss Warden's class around Valentine's Day, or I think it was actually on Valentine's Day, or the day before. I can't remember when Valentine's Day was exactly. So students were using they were using lyrics from Tupac, various lyrics he had that related to love or romance in some way. And they were just like small excerpts of text pasted all over a piece of paper, and then the students had to cut those up and write their own love poems, either sincere or ironic love poems, and they could write it to either a conventional love object, so a person, or a less conventional love object, like a cat or homework, right? So those were the activities students were learning, basically how to use language effectively for a specific communication purpose and for specific audiences in both classes. In watching Miss Johnson work as an inclusion specialist in a general educator's inclusive classroom, I mainly saw Miss Johnson circulate the classroom and providing assistance, one-on-one assistance to individuals students who either raised their hand and requested help, or whom Miss Johnson had some prior knowledge about providing extra assistance. So some of the things I saw her doing was going around and reframing the assignment for students. So the teacher presents the assignment at the beginning of class, tells the students what they'll be doing, and then Ms. Johnson goes around and ensures that individual students clearly understood the assignment description and their task for the day. I also saw her translating sort of like a larger assignment into a list of instructions for what to complete, right? So I saw her write out, for example, with the poem activity, like, okay, first you want to identify who your love poem is to. Then you want to identify if it's going to be if it's going to express genuine love for this object, or if it's going to express ironic love for this object. And then next is to cut out words that you'd like to use and then to assemble the words. You know, she wrote out steps for students on a piece of paper. She also would sit down next to students for extended periods of time. So for example, in Miss Kechuk's classroom with the Genius Hour projects, those students were primarily working in the computer lab. And so Miss Johnson would sit next to a particular student and provide them with assistance using the technology. For some students, even like figuring out how to open a word processor was a little challenging. And so she would help them sort of manipulate and maneuver the technology that was necessary for completing the work for the day. She absolutely, she seemed to have a great deal of trust from the students, right? So students, all students, and of course I didn't, it was never revealed to me which students, the teachers never told me who had IEPs, who had 504 plans, who had documented learning disabilities, right? So this information was never made to me, and I never made any assumptions about any of the students. And so based on my observations, it seemed as though every student in both classes was really comfortable raising their hands and specifically calling for or requesting assistance from Miss Johnson, right? So they equally viewed her as the teacher of the classroom. In fact, I saw them asking for her assistance as much, if not more than the classroom, the general educators' assistance. She was also, in some ways, she was like a safer person to ask, right? So like the teacher is given the assignment, and there seemed to be some discomfort or uncertainty about asking the classroom teacher, like, wait, what did you mean by that? I don't understand. But Miss Johnson was the more trusted person who they could say, wait a minute, I don't understand. Can you tell me again what it is that she's looking for? So that seemed to be very, very effective. And because of that trusting relationship, I would say that she very effectively worked as a resource for students. She was a student resource in the classroom. If I could change one thing about Miss Johnson's presence in the general educator's classroom, I observed her in two different teachers' classrooms. In Miss Keychuk's class, she definitely took more of a back seat. And in my interview, she explained to me a little bit why she took such a backseat role. And by backseat, I mean that she was just there to provide assistance to students. She was not there as the classroom teacher, and so she never sort of occupied any time or space in front of the room. She only helped individuals, and she worked on that individual basis throughout the entire class period. And so I guess the potential change or adaptation that I might suggest, or that I would like to see if I was the general educator working with an inclusion specialist, would be a stronger working relationship with the specialist who's, in my classroom, who has equal professional certifications to myself, right? So they're both licensed educators with their own set of expertise, and each one is able to bring some specific perspective to the content and the instruction. And so, in an ideal situation, and I think in the most effective inclusive classroom, the inclusion specialist and the content area teacher would work very closely together, right, in order to ensure that the classroom instruction was fulfilling the needs of both the content and the function of the inclusive classroom. Miss Johnson did tell me that she felt a lot more comfortable facilitating class time in Miss Warden's classroom, because she felt as though Miss Warden's class time was a lot more structured, and so it was a lot easier for her to sort of jump in and to do some of that teaching. And so I did observe her co-teach or sort of co-facilitate the opening activity for the day, which was this word build exercise that Miss Johnson facilitated, while Miss Warden went around the classroom and checked homework for the day. And it was vocabulary homework that was related to the warm-up that Miss Johnson was facilitating. So I was about to say that I've said everything for the day, but I'm looking back at my notes and see that there was also a question about materials. I didn't see Miss Johnson using any particular resources or materials, devices, or otherwise, instructional devices. One thing that just occurred to me that Miss Johnson revealed in the interview that I conducted with her was that one of the projects, there was a kind of, it was a WebQuest assignment that Miss Keychuk had designed for her language arts classes, and it was a really challenging assignment for some students because of the nature of having to be in multiple browsers at once at the same time that they were sort of writing things in a Word document, that sort of like moving back and forth, that executive function of being able to move between multiple internet browser pages and a Word document was challenging and difficult. And so what Miss Johnson wound up doing was sort of gleaming from each of those WebQuest documents. Basically, she printed all of those web pages out and gave a paper packet copy to the student so that the student was able to complete the assignment in front of them. So that they actually had like printouts of the web pages, and then she provided a worksheet for the student that the student was then able to fill in by hand rather than using a computer. So I guess those are the kinds of extra materials that Miss Johnson designs. Also, Miss Keychuk, in my interview with Miss Keychuk, she said that there's another student who has rather significant dyslexia, so much so that the handwriting, she referred to it as dyslexia, and I wonder if there might also be some dysgraphia in there as well. But in any case, the student's handwriting is illegible, in part because the handwriting, the script itself is difficult to read, but also because the letters are not, they don't spell the words that this, so when I view the word, it is a nonsensical word to me, whereas the student recognizes it as a very specific word, such as plot, right? But for me, the letters don't have no meaning together in the way that they are. So another thing that Miss Johnson does for this particular student is that she will scribe his answers for him. So the student will do the worksheet once through, and then Miss Johnson will come back and say, okay, so here's number 1. So what is it that you said here? And then she'll write his answers for him, what he meant to say. But her materials are pretty, that at least as far as I observed, pretty conventional, and she didn't have a whole lot to say about extra materials in the interview either. So in an attempt to try to keep this video still shorter than the other two, which were perhaps a little too long, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to me reflect on my field experiences this semester. They were a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the opportunity to get to speak about them.